Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited about this episode today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. We are constantly being shaped by seemingly irrelevant stimuli, subliminal information, and internal forces we don't know a thing about. Robert Sapolsky.
Mm.
Our guest today, not only a student of the great Robert Sapolsky. If you don't know who that is, either get a life or get into this podcast. Our guest today is not only a student and a teacher, but a mentor, an inspiration, a coach, a metabolic interventionist. We'll get into what that is because that's the coolest name ever. A friend of the Culture Matters podcast. I had the blessing of meeting them in a community that we love very deeply here, the Top Contractor School, through the one and only Cisco Barron, who's an amazing, amazing guy. Adam Geiger's back. I want to shout out our first episode. If you're listening to this podcast, go listen to that episode after this. It's episode 550. Very different conversation. Go into the ins and outs of words that go beyond my comprehension. That I challenge you. You'll want to become not only a better person but a higher performer. Very inspiring. But thanks for coming back to the show. I'm so excited to gain a self-awareness around what the heck I could be doing to excel at a higher level. I've got so many thoughts, but anyway, thanks for coming back to the show, brother. I'm
Oh, it's
excited.
my pleasure, man.
Yeah, we really got to mix more fitness into the culture. And right, if I did the ratio of like how many people we have on talk about health, it would definitely be less than 1%. So like actually I have a question in that. It's like, is it weird as a because you have a background in business as well, and capitalism to an extent, as well as teaching and mentoring people around their fitness for your a long tenure. What are your thoughts on the fact that yeah, like this is a show about culture, but it's a business show, and less than 1% of the guests have been anything around health or fitness or anything. It's like is why aren't entrepreneurs more fitness oriented, or are they? And I'm just too fat to notice. I'm good either way. I'm just
Excuse
curious
me.
what your thoughts on that. Like,
Um, I think that I don't think that health, wellness, fitness has been thoroughly explained enough for people to understand its true benefits for an entrepreneur. Um, I also think that because there's kind of a culture within entrepreneurism where most are unhealthy, overworked, overstressed, under nutrients, um, underadapted, underslept, all these things, overfat. And there's so many of them. It's just become like, if you're this, then this comes with it. Like it almost runs mutually exclusive. Like it's what it has to be. Um, because all your time is associated with the business. And there isn't that realization of if your not only your body was fitter, but if your brain was able to produce acetylcholine and was more insulin sensitive, you'd get work done faster and have more time for freedom and be less stressed. And so it's like be more proficient, don't be so busy.
you mentioned this word acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine.
What is that?
So acetylcholine is your brain is going to utilize it basically as a form of energy.
Wow.
And without things like acetylcholine, um, we have improper nerve function within the brain. Without being cardiovascular fit, your obviously we know our body becomes insulin resistant, like diabetes and things like that, but your brain does too. And since our brain runs predominantly on glucose, if we can't get glucose into a cell, and then once it's in the cell, metabolize it proficiently, we can't make decisions, recall memory, learn any of the things high performers truly want to do very proficiently. Your glass ceiling kind of becomes very thick, I guess.
I'm curious about walking every day. what your philosophy is on that?
Walking is something that we talked about in the last episode. Most people underdo. It's one of the lowest hanging fruit for beta oxidation. So for fat utilization, metabolization, things like that. Um, all the way through to just how you partition food, your energetics, things like that, stress levels, all that good stuff.
Does
Even, I mean,
that
if you're
have
walking,
any
you're probably outside. So even sunlight and circadian rhythm and all the hormones that go with that.
the acetylcholine? And you mentioned cardio. What are the the how do I get into cardio state? What are some ways to actually get in that, or does that have what relationship does that have with heart rate? Like because I used to look at those treadmills and it says,
Yeah.
at this heart rate you're in this or you're not, and that still confuses me to this day. Even though at one point I was a glorified salesperson, right? It's like taking them through this means this, but like what does it
Yeah.
actually mean?
Um, well, those are very standardized numbers, and those numbers are actually going to be built individually off of our resting heart rate. And so, when you're doing your actual cardiovascular work, some of the indications of that are going to be high heart rate, low oxygen levels, sweating, um, your inability to hold a conversation. That point where somebody's talking to you and you're like, you want to respond back, but you're like, hold on, give me a second, I gotta. You're trying to catch your breath.
You can't
So,
talk while you're on the treadmill.
yeah, I mean, basically without oxygen, right? So if you're struggling to get in oxygen, the more you're struggling, the less oxygen's there and more cardiovascular work you're doing.
It was funny. I was working out with a good buddy of mine, really, and he's hilarious. And we were working out, and then at the end we did cardio, and he was like ramping up the incline all this way and the speed. And I normally don't walk as inclined or as fast. And he was saying to me, but also like he realized I can't even, it was like he's funny. So he's like, well, I can't even walk, meaning like he was had to tell himself, I got to do this because he wanted to lose a certain amount of fat in a certain period of time for a bet. And he was like, to try to psych himself into it, he's like, I can't even walk. I'm that lazy or I'm that undisciplined that I can't even walk. And he's doing it's explaining this to me while I'm on the treadmill, while I'm like,
So you were in a
because he was at a higher
cardiovascular state
level.
using a lot of glucose.
He was at a higher level of fitness because he's been so consistent doing this.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. Like you had to be there if you knew him. It's like really funny. But like one thing I have two questions in that. One is yes, what was happening to me? This is like I'm normally, let's just say 25% more slowly and probably 40% on less of an incline. I'm exercising with someone with a greater level of cardiovascular fitness. Is that something that I'm overdoing it, trying to keep up with my friend? Or or is that like the push pull that's like necessary? Or is that way too vague based on like generalities to really give feedback? But I am curious, like, you know, why I was so what is it behind that would led me to be so, exhausted? And I guess it has to do with some of what you're sharing.
Yeah. I mean, it would be the inability to utilize carbohydrates or glucose as a form of fuel, meaning you couldn't get it out of the bloodstream well, get it into a cell, metabolize it quick enough to make ATP to fuel the body further. You couldn't do that proficiently. And so your body was having to work harder because things weren't being fueled correctly. Um, your ability to deal with oxygen, how much oxygen
Wow.
can you take in, and how much carbon dioxide can you deal with? And what this means is like as you're doing cardiovascular work, we're working cardiorespiratory, so heart and lungs, and so we're going to have the main buildup of carbon dioxide there. Okay. Now, the way oxygen gets delivered is based on kind of like the signaling of carbon dioxide. So if there's a lot of carbon dioxide there, the body knows drop a lot of oxygen, right? Well,
Wow.
the way we develop more carbon dioxide is that outward breath, right? We're not taking in oxygen, we're releasing oxygen. And as that oxygen goes out, we start building up carbon dioxide. Now, as that carbon dioxide builds up, that's when we get that like suffocating feeling and we go, and we breathe in again. Following me so far? So,
Yeah.
all right. So, if we can't let that outward breath happen long enough, right? Because we can't deal with carbon dioxide delivery to the brain, right? That means we don't get a lot of oxygen delivered either, right? And so that's what puts us in the cycle of the right. And now that could also look like someone not on the treadmill, somebody walking around Walmart pushing their cart, and they're because of the same reasons, right? They're demanding so much oxygen, but their body can't keep up with getting enough oxygen in. Now, if you
Wow.
take that to the thought process of that box breathing, right? The breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for five, out for five. That holding, that outward, that holding again is helping you. That out, the breathing it out and then holding at the end is helping you build up your ability to deal with carbon dioxide, so that when you breathe in next time, you can breathe in more oxygen, take more oxygen down, and we can kind of start box breathing longer and longer seconds. You'll notice it like if you're laying in bed at night and you just kind of try doing that. Like take a couple deep breaths, breathe all the way out, and hold your breath for as long as you can. Take a couple more big deep breaths, try it again for a second and third time. By that second and third time, you'll realize you can hold your breath on that outward when there's no oxygen in there for like a minute or longer. It's insane because you've
Wow.
learned to deal with carbon dioxide. You've built up so much that you can drop off more oxygen. Now you're more
So
oxygenated.
in theory, could learning how to breathe help us gain fitness faster?
Learning how to breathe can help you gain fitness faster,
Wow.
lower cholesterol, lower stress, lower anxiety, uh, lower cholesterol levels on when you're getting your bloods taken, uh, lower triglycerides. It can do so many things. Like just people learning how to nasal breathe correctly it's one of the like the pillars of things that I teach is nasal breathing and learning how to do it correctly. Not correctly,
Just
but
as an aside, like philosophically, to me, it's so fucking cool
it
to think
is.
that life is so complicated that I can learn how to breathe better. It's kind of
Yes.
exciting. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Life is so,
Yes.
I can operate at such a higher level. Like, there's
Like
so
it is
much
such a big
better.
thing.
Yeah, because I don't even know how to breathe yet. I haven't even started living. I don't even know how to breathe personally.
The thing we
That
do
excites
all
me.
the time,
Yeah.
100% of the time, we never stop doing.
Okay. So another scenario that happened over Christmas. Uh, I was, I'm at Brian's house, a mutual friend of ours, and Preston wants to play in the basement, which means I'm going to be running. Dude, it was a wake up call. It's like I should be able to run around the basement with this 5-year old. I thought I was dying. I felt like I'm not anybody. I mean, I don't think I'm obese. I'm fat, like, I'm overweight probably. Even the probably is like I'm unclear on that. The probably LY is like Janine Driver's yelling at me. Everything with an LY is a lie. So it's like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm overweight. It was like I couldn't run with Preston, really, without just like, and now I'm letting him down, right? He's gonna be in therapy in 20 years over Jay not be able to run with him.
Over this
That's what
core
I'm
memory of Christmas.
He's gonna be in, yeah, 30 years in therapy over Jay Duran, the culture man, wouldn't
Way to go, Jay.
to me. So I
You really
on
fucked
one,
it up this time.
yeah, I fucked it up. On one shoulder, my Brad is like easily running on the treadmill because he wants to win a bet. I'm out of breath. On the other, I can't play with Preston. Man, it's like I guess the question that is okay. Well, actually, here's another statement. I want your feedback on this. I feel now because I think I've surrounded myself with great people. I had the self-awareness, like accountability, right? We who we run with or who like the people in our life. it
More of
matters.
their flock together thing.
Yeah, and it's like Brad never had to say anything to me. He just is modeling this. It's like there's before and there's after. He's just showing these values because he's been fat too. And he's like, looks amazing. He's done such a great job. He's showing his values. And I was like, all right, and the timing of that 2 weeks later, now and I can't even run with Brian's second to newest addition to the family in the basement. It's like, man, I have to figure out how to incorporate. How can I be high performance at all these things and be such a low performer in this? So I share that with you. Like, I'd love your feedback as like, I can't be alone in this for the people that have businesses that are trying to be successful in whatever their vertical, that we must, go through the same problems. And
You're not alone. This is what you're experiencing was my wake up call like 2 years ago when I really started like grading deep into what I'm doing. But it was overarchingly mine looked the same way. It was like these things suddenly started showing up and people weren't directly telling me things. It could have been like the way in which, or I'm just kind of realizing things and pondering and kind of, connecting all my own dots. And I was like, oh my God, like I thought, but in actuality, and again, that reminds me of the last podcast when we talked about that study of people thinking like we think, and then when we saw it or we saw the data, it was like, like we connected our
about the
own
how
dots
many
with our
steps.
data. Yeah, and so it's I I I can tell you, I think I don't even know what that percentage would be, but there is a high amount of entrepreneurs, business owners that feel the same way with you. Like 90, no, that's not true. 60% of my clientele are business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are like, I'm unhealthy. I can feel it. I know the way to push my life, my business, my everything to the next level is through me, changes in me. Um, they all explain that same thing. None of them have explained anything different. So I have to imagine like it's a lot, it's a lot. It's more like when did it finally hit at what level?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's say well, for our listeners that are they're at that breaking point or that epiphany moment where they're looking for the guide, the hero's journey. They're looking for the guide, right? The Yoda. What are some questions that you would advise our listeners to even ask themselves, like as a self-awareness exercise, before uh, starting to interview for, let's say, whether it's a trainer, a nutritionist, a metabolic interventionist, like some questions that they could ask themselves or how they should be looking at it in themselves. So they're not
Yeah.
wasting their time or others.
Yeah. I think the best way for me to answer this is they have to come to the realization that first, like what is actually going on, right? It's not just fat loss. There's probably something health metabolically that they're dealing with. Poor sleep, fucking erectile dysfunction. Who knows? There's things happening, right? So those are all signs of poor metabolism, poor physiology, right? So what are those things? And then what are causing those things, right? Like if it's the overweight, like it's obviously food and lack of exercise and movement and sun. We know these things, but we're making poor choices for a reason. Like there's behaviors, there's psychology behind this that push us towards our behavior, right? There's hormones that get released and neurotransmitters that get released because of environmental things that happen or even biological things that happen. So I really feel like people have to come to grips that this is so much more than just like taking supplements or working out or getting sunlight or getting put on this super cool, amazing protocol. This is
Hmm.
self work. Like they should look at this the same way they would look at going to see a psychologist or a therapist because there's reasons why you're putting all this other shit before your health. You know what I mean? Like maybe you grew up poor and there wasn't a lot of money, there wasn't a lot of that. And so now you need security and you're a workaholic and you just want to make sure everybody is protected
Yeah,
from
the
that. Like,
only way I'm ever going to get love is wealth and status. Don't we already know that?
right? And so, like, if that's the thought process, like, first we have to come to grips, like, oh my God, I think like that. Like, we can be really fucking real with ourselves. Like, maybe that's the thought, right?
Yes,
Truth. And so,
yes,
like, or maybe it's the bigger the business I own, the bigger of a kingdom, and people will think because people have always thought something of me. And
yes.
so, go, 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 go. Like, that's what's got to be first. Like, okay, there's other shit driving this. And then I need to deal with that. Who can help me deal with that? Who can help me then tie in that to how it's affecting me here and how that's affecting my health? And then who can help me correct this? Maybe that's two or three people. Maybe that's one person.
Dude,
Maybe,
I got literally the Avengers is in my head right now. Norman
yeah, yeah,
Rosenthal,
yeah, yeah.
Adam Geiger, Michael Chris. I'm like literally seeing it. You guys are walking in capes.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm getting
Because
excited, but
every one of my clients I
building the
talk to, there's these crazy stressors. There's this resentment. There's these holes they've dug themselves in. There's this, they connect shame and guilt to bad choices, and all these things have to be rectified because if not, I always go back to that. You're fighting against the house. Like, you're gonna win a hand or two, but the house will always fucking win, always. So you have to become the house. You own your own bank, own your own casino now. Like, you can't let some other owner own this casino or bank. Like, that's what
uh
people have to really come to realize. It's a big deal.
like building your team of have you ever heard that reference, Team of Rivals, Abraham Lincoln?
Mm-mm.
There's a book, Dorothy something or another, but it's about his cabinet, and he put these different advisors, and they didn't all see the same view, but they were there to make him less of a tyrant. Uh, Lincoln is a yeah, we seem to like him.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind
he's
of
a
like what
famous
I think it
leader.
was Elon Musk that he was doing at Twitter with the like monitoring how it was going to be done is like all these different eclectic people that didn't see the same thing, but they'd have to. That's what he wanted. He wanted everybody to have a different view.
Yep.
That makes
Yep.
sense.
Yeah. Uh oh, did you have a word for 2024?
Oh no, I don't yet. I
No,
forgot about.
2024.
Oh, for last year?
Yeah, that's my first question. Yeah. Did you have
Uh-uh.
one?
Uh-uh.
What would it have been?
You kind of started that thought process and going to the top contractor school, doing that, like that was a like started that thought for me. Typically for New Year's, I'm very much like I make a lot of resolutions and I kind of have my own purpose for that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
uh, oh man, something I guess I would go off something that really represented this last year, and it would be probably something like education, something at that level, because I have just done
Yeah,
so
like
much educating myself on with schooling outside of that with my mentorships and I've grown exponentially. I think in 2024 I've grown more than in any other
wow.
year of my life.
Wow.
For sure. For sure. Maybe growth would be a good word, but that's kind of like basic surface level shit. But
How did you come to that place where that could be possible, you know? Because
for
there's
me
got to be
personally,
people listening that are saying, well, shit, the year that just passed was your biggest in your whole life. You're not 20. Like, why didn't I have that? Like, oh, there's gonna be someone listening. And it's like this year that just passed was I didn't grow at all.
yeah, growth was big for me this year. It's because the year prior I hit my, I guess, like kind of the year prior and sort of into 24. I really hit my, like, I don't know if it was rock bottom, but a really low, where it was things had to change. And that really spurted. That's when I told you I just really noticed the things, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not the same human I was on so many levels, and some of those are good, but there was a lot more cons than good, and I had to dig into that. And so prior to the year before was probably my lowest year because I was also doing a lot of digging. And so I like that sucked. That was hard. That was hard. And but that also got me into the psychology part of what I do now and my big belief system and how it works. And it also kind of lets me like, I've been there, I understand it, and I get it. Um, and it led to show me how much disease, literal disease, can be caused, and pain, true pain can be caused by psychological damage, being low, depression, anxiety, all these things. You know what I mean? So,
Wow.
um, going through that really low point, it that those feelings move you. They're there for a reason. You know what I mean? Like anxiety is purposeful. It's not bad. People shouldn't label these things as bad. It's purposeful because if we didn't have these shit feelings, nothing would kick us in the ass. They get the fuck up. You know what I mean? So like, unfortunately for me, I had to go like well past anxiety until I was like, oh, but it is what it is. That's
Yeah.
like always been my thing, is like just
Yeah.
he's got to whoop his own head. And I'm all, yeah, a lot apparently. Um,
Stubborn. Or would you say stubborn? Is that or
no, it's well, we get deep into this, but it's more into my ADHD and like the windows and how we remember stuff. And so it makes me easily fall into the same bullshit all the time. Yeah, on
moving
Reddit,
fast, entrepreneurial mind,
impulsiveness, huh?
like the entrepreneurial mind, the moving
Yeah,
fast.
it's you just going. It's I have a very ready, shoot, aim mentality, and I have to work against that a lot in you know flipping that line. But yeah, that's what did it for me. And I think for probably most people, that's, or for everybody, that's what we have to on some level, right? We have to feel that, I don't like this feeling. I got to make change. How much of that feeling you have to feel is dependent, right? Like,
Yeah,
apparently I have a
yeah.
high pain tolerance there, and I could really just load the bullshit on.
What advice do you have for the healing profession? I say the healing profession, like those that are listening that are trainers, coaches, mentors, the servants to the people, the servants to the people. What advice do you have on how to be a high performing coach, mentor? Because you work with some great clientele that, really trust you and trust you enough to, bring them into their ecosystem. There's got to be
Yeah.
so much. How the hell did you get yourself in those positions, right? What's really worked for you to be that servant and gain the
Yeah.
respect of the quality clientele?
Um, I think I'm naturally very empathetic. Um, People, I've every one of my clients from day one, it's just they've always within a few sessions, just it's easy for them just start pouring everything and telling me and letting me in. And so I think feeling safe, there's something there. I don't know what it is. But it's cool. Uh, and I think the other part, and this is something that I knew, but I didn't, it maybe for me, it didn't hit me hard, was really educating yourself on what this is. Like, we as healers have a high duty, no matter, if you cover a lot of things like myself, or you're very niche, like a massage therapist, like you have to know more than the surface level. You have a duty to know more than that. You have a duty when these people come into you to really know how to try and fix these things and not just run them through things that might make them acutely feel better. You know what I mean? Like, when people come see all of us, they're usually kind of sort of at their wits end. They're hurting, they want change, and that's why they're really just like
Yeah.
giving you all their emotion. And we have to respect, there has to be some reverence there for them. And so
Wow.
because we respect that, we have that reverence, we have to like really, I mean, really educate ourselves, like go outside of the box, learn more than just what, mainstream science or TikTok or however you learned is telling
Yeah.
you, and like get into the nitty gritty, and so you can form your own opinions and form your own hypothesis, because we know, but we don't know. Science is constantly changing. And so like, yeah, I don't know. I feel very passionate about that. Like, you have to
Yeah.
know this. You owe it to those people, because if you don't, you're predatory. You're just playing on their emotions,
Wow,
and
that's great.
that's really fucked up.
I wrote down very empathetic, you know, leading to safety, right? So vulnerability leads to
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness of the counterpart. Their vulnerability can lead to their self-awareness, a high sense of duty, you said, and with that comes the responsibility to know a lot, respect them, and I wrote down passion.
Hmm.
Because you're saying people make it's like I'm at my wit's end, so I'm looking for help. That's a lot of responsibility that could easily be taken advantage of without the awareness, the duty, the confidence, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, it's almost like the line there's like effort on some level because it can only really be defined by that person. Nobody, if somebody could easily look at somebody and be like, man, look at how slow they're moving, the poor decisions, but maybe let bad sleep and an upset stomach and like that's really all your effort, but because of these extra, you know what I mean? So it's within you. And because it is within you and nobody can really hold you that accountable to it, that's why it means so much.
Hmm.
There's no checklist for it. It's you know, it's you and it's within you. And yeah, it's just a big deal to me. That is a big deal, because it can't be checked.
What about how about this online world that we're in as it relates to it, training, nutrition, growth via virtual? Because there is that sentimentality of, having the in person. I've done both, and I mean, right, there's value in both. Of course, in
Yeah, yeah,
person, it's like relational. If you're high relational, high empathy, like it's nice to work out with somebody. Virtual, obviously, there's the logistical advantages, productivity, time. Like, how do we weigh as listeners? I'm assuming that our listeners are smart enough to invest in themselves as it relates to,
yeah.
right. We've met the people throughout our careers and lives that, oh, I work out alone. It's like, oh, so you do all your own taxes?
Yeah.
Oh, you did all your legal. Oh, you wrote the operating agreement? Oh,
All
oh,
for your
oh,
own business.
yeah, that's like great. Like, what I'm saying? Oh, you cut your own hair too, and you made the diamond that you bought your partner. Okay, got it.
Wow, you're amazing at everything.
Yeah,
You know all
yeah.
the things.
Must be
In that, right? It's
God,
like,
really. They're all knowing and all seeing and all
yeah, either
in
you're lying to
control.
yourself or you don't really want to put in the real effort. You know what I mean? Like,
So I know I'm projecting right now. It's funny,
I get
but
it. I
like,
do. I'm
yeah. So my question in that is, what's your advice for the person that's never done the virtual as it relates to having, whether it's like someone like yourself at a deeper level, higher level metabolic interventionist, or just, hey, they want to hire a trainer and they're going to work out with them on Zoom or on virtual, and that's going to be so, and they're a little anxious of going in that direction because they don't think it's necessarily going to work. What's your philosophy advice around in-person virtual, how to balance the two, how to make it work?
Yeah. Um,
I want to go
I
down
think
these
they both
alternate
have a place and they
options.
both have a lot of benefits and downfalls. You know, in person, obviously, like number one is probably financial. It's going to cost you more money to meet with this person more per times per week. Um, and with that, when you're meeting with coaches, you have to make sure that, are they a coach who only coaches you when you're with them? Or are they a coach who coaches you when you're with them and you have things built out to do on your own and other things, right? Like that's going to make a difference. Um, Virtual is more cost efficient. You can get a lot more done. It's on your time, but you have to be really either proficient with habits or wanting to work on better habits and willing to work on better habits and willing to do harder things. You know, I think regardless, that coach is only with you an hour of the day, right? So regardless, you're doing a lot of the same thing. So I mean, try them both, see which one fits you a little bit better. I mean, they both have so many good and bad things about them. It's probably so person by person, because I do both and I see success on both ends. Um, and really, I would say the common denominator of success between the
Now we're
two
talking.
is is participation and effort. That's just it. Like, if you're not willing to participate at some level and put in enough effort on either one of those programs on a consistent basis, that you're going to see the results you want to see to keep you motivated enough to keep you going, nobody can help you. Nobody can help you. You know, like, it's my responsibility to create it in a way that's functional for you and that, creates dopamine and is exciting and, makes you want to do it. But there's going to be hard about it. You have to be willing to do the hard stuff. I mean, we have to be willing to do hard. If we don't do hard, we don't adapt. And if we're not adapting, we're dying. So take that for what it's worth. You know what I
Man,
mean?
I have lost my why for the fitness. My why for the fitness when I was 12 was I was fat, or that's how I really looked. I was like, I hate this. And that was really just me externalizing some early abandonment pathologies and et cetera, et cetera. We'll invite Dr. Norman in the podcast for that one. Well, shit, I got three other people we should invite for that. We could invite,
Yeah.
now I have an idea. This would be like a whole great, yeah,
They're
we could
all
have
just
a,
pick you apart like Avengers.
I'm telling you, dude, it would be like, we're in the hospital. There's all the doctors around the
The
patient,
team.
and like, yeah, and I'm sedated or whatever. They're like picking up my brain. But anyway, that's the visual there. But it's like, okay. And then from 12 to for about 13, 14 years, I mean, I was I was a brolic person. People were excited about, but it was fake. I mean, I was just fake about it. It's like I didn't have, clearly that wasn't my calling, right? My calling is I'm like a butterfly. I still have wings like out of the cocoon. But where I'm going with this is maybe someone could resonate this that's with this that's listening. He's like, I don't know what my why truly is with fitness anymore, because what it
Yeah.
was before I was paralyzed in that ATV accident on September 22nd, 2017 was ego. It was how I felt, when I'm at the supermarket, my tricep is bulging for the push-ups I did in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So, so it's kind of, and it's like, is it being able to run around with Preston? Is it getting
But let me
more
ask you this.
energy? Yeah, sure, please. Yeah,
Let me
I'm
ask
not.
you this. Um, what is the last thing somebody physically showed you how to do? You didn't know how to do it, and they showed you how to do it. Big or small, doesn't matter. But you're like, okay,
Oh, last week, amazing. I was like this. It was a workout. I did a workout with John Kolb, this like strongman guy that was this unbelievable nonprofit. He has this amazing nonprofit for veterans. He showed me a whole workout. It was like inside, outside strength training, like my lats and my back and pull. Like from an exercise standpoint, there was a thing we did for my forearms because my posture is all messed up. I walk like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Like Jenna's like, dude, you got everyone. So client partners have said, hey, dude, you got to walk straight. What's wrong? I'm telling it's I walk like, and some of it's psychological, of course, but and another part is like my arm was crushed. I had nerve damage, and it's my traps. You know, that's why John was like, let's do shoulder back lat things. Like, I, rule number one in 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson's book, one of his books, is stand up straight with your shoulders back. I'm the exact inverse. I stand upside down, have my shoulders slouched. So, anyway, to answer your question, it was a workout, and I learned all sorts of
okay,
new exercises. I even climbed the rock wall a little bit. It was like
all right.
painful.
So
And
it sounds like what he showed you was, hey, you punch over. Here's an exercise. Do it like this. That'll improve that. And you were like, oh, I feel it there. I would have never known that if you didn't teach me.
sure. Oh, definitely never would have bothered with any of that
Never would have
stuff.
known that if he didn't teach you that exercise
No,
does that. Would have never crossed your mind. Like,
no.
no, never. So when you were young, you were overweight and you got teased, and that taught you it was bad. And so now to make it better, you, worked out and supplements and all that stuff and went to the other extreme because what you learned was that if you're in shape, you'll look better. And if you look better, you get more respect and
Yeah,
girls and
all good
attention and
things.
positive stuff, right? That's most of America. That goes back to what I said at the beginning with the CEOs. That's what we're all taught. But really, right now in your life and in these guys' life, what you're saying is, I can do whatever, uh, 14 podcasts a week. I can edit X amount. I can do this amount, da, da, da. I have this much energy, right? I'm this proficient. What if I said there was ways in which you could work out and ways you can supplement and ways you can breathe that would literally make you a super performer? Like you're already a super performer. And these guys we're talking about are super performers at the top of the level, but you're super performing feeling shitty. And that's different, right? Like if I said, hey, I need you in this game and we got to win and you're feeling shitty.
I'm also nowhere near where I want to be in life because the results tell me that. Like, so
Yeah.
yes, I'm a bitch.
So what if you could think faster? What if you could make better decisions? What if you could learn faster? What if you could read a book quicker? What if you could, anything you did it 2 times the speed as far as what you're interested in your work. And the byproduct of that was also better blood labs, healthier, looked better, etc. What if your why, that's just overarching, right? But like, what if your why was in there? Because you could dial
I like
that
it.
part down and go, you know what, actually, I do feel like this. I have been realizing this. Maybe you want to be able to articulate better, speak better, have better dialect, remember vocabulary better. All these things that you do at a high level, but need to be able to do at a higher level are all related to that. These are the things that I help these CEOs work on in reality, because that's what's interesting. If I say like, hey, this is going to give your arms a pump, nobody fucking cares because that doesn't
Yeah,
apply to
my
your head. You
why
can't
needs to
take
be
that out of the gym.
attached. My why needs to be attached to my identity today.
Yeah. And you still have, and so this goes back to the psychology, right? Like, why are you attaching it back there? What are you stuck on? What is the thought process? Um, you know, uh, Nerves that wire together fire together, right? Like,
Yeah.
what has wired together for so many years? What thought processes are you running in the background that we need to think about and talk about and just get out and go, oh, because what I find with these CEOs is that if if I can get them to speak it, then they go, oh, and then they'll go home, then they'll come back the next day, and they'll go, hey, so I was thinking about, I'm like, yeah, you were, you started connecting dots and they start realizing this is my own toxic behavior. This is how I'm digging my holes. Or you're right. Like when I'm hiring people, like I don't like confrontation. And so I'd rather just hire, or I don't want to tell this person no, or I hold resentment
Yeah.
to my employees
Yeah.
because, and so that starts buying into culture, right? Because
Yeah.
your
Now we're
mood
getting, yeah.
and the way you do things is kind of what creates culture. And so if you're a CEO,
Damn right.
there's a great chance that your biology and physiology has created a shit culture, right? If you have a, a high stress job and that's led to H. pylori and that's led to gut dysbiosis and that's led to lower dopamine and serotonin and it's led to inflammation in the brain and it's led to mitochondrial dysfunction and maybe even mitochondrial dysfunction directly in the penile tissue. And so now it's like hard for you to get an erection and do those fun things with your wife. So you're stressed about that. You're stressed about work,
Wow.
right? Like these are the things they're
Well, of
dealing
course
with,
you're going to be an asshole at work.
right? Like, how do you walk in and go, Fred, hope you had a good day? Like, I had a great weekend sitting at home with a limp dick and hating everybody in my life and not being able to handle anybody because, like, any noise just gets to my brain because, like, you know, I'm stressed out, anxious. Like, so if you want to change the culture, and then you
Real
go,
talk.
well, wow, that's your culture, and you're still making 10 mil. That's fucking crazy. You have a
Have
bunch
you
of
ever
employees that are
seen
working for themselves. Imagine if we took those employees and their boss was way cooler and he acted different over the course of 12 months. You might do 20 million, bro.
how much of
You think
this
that
is
helped me out
about
here?
being a proactive in one's life versus reactive?
It's all about being proactive. Like defense doesn't win Super Bowls here because you have to like no matter where you're at in that hole, how deep your hole is. At some point, you have to get proactive. I mean, I got to do something. Like this ball is rolling downhill, and I've got to start putting pressure back to stop. Like I can't wait for a rock or a hole or for the end. There is no end. Like unfortunately, the end it's a you know what I mean. Like that's a place we don't want to talk about. In we lose too many too. You know what I mean? So like nothing's going to interject until you do. It's that like nobody's going to come fucking save you, right? Like at some point you've got to turn around, put your hands on that rock, dig fucking in, and start slowing it down. And that's going to be that like being proactive, starting to little daily habits here and there, and then those compile, and you start rolling that rock up that hill and gaining momentum, and like. But it takes a long time and it's hard, and then people automatically think, well, how am I going to do all of that with all of this? Right. So that's a crazy thought. Now that I'm
Well, you
about to
bring
spin
up a
off
great
here,
point. Go ahead.
then
Go
that
ahead.
goes to a place of how do we see stress in our brain? What happens there? And so that thought then comes in and we go, okay, well, that's a pretty big fucking deal. You know what I mean? All those things are pretty big deals. And then the next portion of this, it's a deciding factor. Like how big of a deal? How are we going to treat this? Are we going to be very anxious about this big deal, or are we going to be like, yeah, it's a big deal, but like I'll overcome, right? And the deciding factor is like, do I have the resources to fucking deal with this? Can I deal with this, right? And if you're somebody who's never dealt with the problem, who's always just kind of sidestepped it or whatever, this is going to be a big fucking deal, and it's going to project out to your company and everybody. But if you're somebody who's been proactive or you're trying to be proactive, right? You're facing those problems, then you face stress, you adapt from stress, all those good adaptations happen. And your brain does this thing with dopamine where it kind of looks back and goes, hey, like I recognize this is a big deal, but like I've been proactive, dealt with big deals before. Some were good, some were bad, but I overcame them and here I am. So like I can do this. It's going to suck, but I can do this, right? And that outlook looks a lot different than like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know this, or who can call for this? I don't have money for this. Like, you know, those are totally different. And that's how we process stress. And then from there, it starts going downstream, right? Like on one end of them, inflammation, digestive, hormonal issues. And on the other one, adaptation, growth, overcome, person, all these things, those words associate.
Yeah, I'd love to do another when you come back in the future. I'd love to do one just on hormones and how to view it and how to look at it, and what type of due diligence the audience should go through. Because in this world, it's overwhelming complexity, tremendous change, accelerating change, overwhelming complexity, and tremendous competition. Peter Drucker, like things are changing fast. I don't know how many friends I have that are involved in the TRT movement or this thing or that thing, or I'd love to do a show just on hormones, how to go about due diligence, pros, cons, if you're willing. One last, I do have a question about. You ever heard of Brian Johnson? Yeah,
I
he's the
don't think
guy
so.
on TikTok and Instagram that he's like trying to never die. He sold his company for like a
Is he
billion
the brown
dollars.
hair and his face looks really tight skinned, skinnier. He's like some kind of
Yes, yes,
multi-billionaire,
yeah,
and just like his whole
yes,
day revolves around like
yes.
he has a Vice series around about him, I think. A documentary.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah,
don't know if
tell
you
me
ever
that.
heard of him,
Yeah.
but I just think you'd be a great addition to his team.
That's
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's like my ultimate goal, right? Is to
Yeah.
have clients that maybe aren't that in depth, right? But they realize that like on some level, what can happen if we put effort into life. We just put effort into that too, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it's an exciting prospect. So, man, I would love that opportunity though to go down that rabbit hole.
Sure.
In closing, what would you say if you want our listeners to take away one thing from this conversation that they could put into action based on we kind of scrolled around some of my uh some of the limited awareness, yet, the degree of awareness I have over some of the conflicts of why I've not really made, I would say, really much progress in the physical domain in the last 7 years. Wait, it's 2024. 2024. Yeah, really. I would say just about none. So yeah, we've if you were to what how does this help our listeners? What's something that you would suggest for them to do other than maybe unsubscribe from this podcast after listening to me pontificate on my uh, wellness failings?
Um, well, first thing before I answer that, I have a question for you. Two questions for you. One, because I know you got to end the podcast quick, but I want to hear this part of it because I was going to ask you before. You know, one of the things you said was how you pontificated on all your failings. How do you feel like your health, your current health, has impacted what you're doing, what you want to do in the future, and the level in which you want to do it now and in the future?
I I think okay, so how does it yeah, every I think that the path to it's really not money, it's time. It's not just time, it's like how much energy can fit in a unit of time. So it's not resources, it's resourcefulness.
Would you be,
So yeah, I don't know
what
if
if
I'm answering this, but
there was a timeline that began with having to find resourcefulness, but with every day that you found some resourcefulness, you were also delivered more of that time because you also became more resourceful. Does that
that's
make
kind of where
sense?
I'm going is I think that to get to the next level, well, it's all the higher we go in the hierarchy, it's who are the people that we're doing it with, and what's their capacity, and what do they offer, and how much value can be created. And that becomes a time conversation, not a resources conversation, because people become resources. We all, so anyway, like I am of the belief that, yeah, like you said something earlier that was an observation that you've had that I think was complimentary, something to the effect of like I'm performing at a high level. It's like in certain domains. I believe that I'm performing not nearly as at a level that I could with more energy. Like it's like energy, right? More like that's what we eat, that's how we sleep, that's how long we sleep, the quality of it, the types of foods we have. Like, yeah. So I mean, that's kind of where my head's at. And the more unbelievable, like the most unbelievably successful people that I better, and not just like the like whatever they have accumulated, because it's all relative, but like how they function as human beings and how much they get done. See, I admire more of like how much can get done.
In
And
an amount of time.
yeah, that's what excites me. And like I like the learning. Yeah.
You just said your why.
Yeah.
You literally just fucking found your why.
Yeah, dude. I wish I could fist
It's
pump
like
you in the
to do more things in a smaller measurement of
yeah.
time.
I need to write
So
this
that
down.
means being more proficient
Yes, more
excites Jay
things.
because he can get more done, build his business, become this thing he
Yeah.
sees faster,
And I'll
right?
be clear, it's really the business is a means to an end. Like the business is what funds the research project. The research project is I got to learn things. Like I need to learn.
So
Like
you're
I'm
your own
answering
research
questions.
project.
Yeah. Like culture matters, bro. Like this is a $1 trillion thing as a consequence of culture being the most. I mean, hello, what happens to the species if culture doesn't
Yeah.
matter? It goes extinct. It's like this is multi-dimension,
On
multi-planetary
every
shit,
level.
dude. Like it's this multi-planetary shit. It's like at least I can do is go on the goddamn treadmill, Brad.
Like the way you look at culture like that and how it just applies to everything from music to movies to
Yes,
dressing to all those things, it applies.
it's my
And it's
calling.
without it would just be life would be a Twitter feed. It would be fucking so messy all the time, just jumbled with shit. Like no algorithm to it. Like culture's like a an algorithm for life on some level. It categorizes
Yeah,
shit.
we're
You
culture.
know,
And so I need
it's
to,
how I feel about the body in this too. I had put that as like
that's
that's why
why
I'm like,
we,
applies on so much. Like, and once you see how culture applies to you personally, then you have that, oh, right? Like, and I feel like you just had that of like, that's my thing. So you know what I
okay,
mean?
I
Like,
wrote it down. More things in shorter time is a great heuristic for me to take myself more seriously in this way, which I greatly appreciate that. I hope the audience is paying close attention because for today, just one quick thing. For the listeners that want to get connected with you, what's the fastest way to start a relationship?
go to my website, adamsiston.com. You can schedule in a free 30-minute consultation. We'll chat. When you do go to schedule it in the comments, just try to give me as much details as possible so I'm prepared for what I'm walking into as far as like what's going on with you so I can, kind of give answers and I'm not spending
Yep.
more time asking questions than kind of helping. But yeah, that'd be the best way.
Adam, you're the man. If you're listening to this, go to episode 550, get a deep dive in science, Adam's regimen, and how he's learning not just these words, but what they mean and how to apply them to your life and how to make you stronger, better, faster. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is always a great time.